Good morning and welcome to Missoula Real Estate Today. This is Denny Bedard. Missoula Real Estate Today is presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Diane's been working with buyers and sellers in the Missoula market for over 25 years and shares her insights on the local housing market. Along with her trusted partners, Diane provides complete service for your real estate transaction and brings us guests who provide useful information on industry-related topics and trends. And now, Missoula Real Estate Today on News Talk, KGVO. Hey, thank you as always for joining us on Missoula Real Estate Today. We hope you're enjoying your weekend so far, and great to have you be a part of News Talk KGVO and Missoula Real Estate Today. Where my guest, this is a little bit different. You do-it-yourselfers. You're really going to like the show this weekend. My guest is a good friend. I don't get to do that very often, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to go easy on you. You're going to get the tough questions today, Taft. Are you ready?
Yes, Danny, I expect nothing less from you, being the grueling taskmaster that you always are.
No mercy. Steve Taft, the owner of Montana Tool here in Missoula. Welcome you to the show, and we always like to start with the background on Montana Tool. This store's been in Missoula a long, long time, and how you came to be its owner, and wife Bernita, of course, too.
Right. Well, yeah, Montana Tool's been around for 50 years plus. We're really in our 51st year.
Wow.
It was started by two brothers who were refugees from the Missoula Mercantile. So there's a historic tie to the community. And so when the Merc and the wholesale business of the Merc shut down, they had nothing to do. And what did they know? Tools. And so it started out as more a sawmill supply house of all things. And the other side of the business originally was wholesale tools to the hardware stores, the mom and pops throughout western Montana. They owned the business for the first 10 years, and then my predecessor, Kent Mahler, was there for 33 years. And he took the business, and, as times changed, he changed with it to keep it viable. So we got out of the wholesale business as being our primary, and that became kind of a backseat. One of the interesting things, I've seen pictures back in the day in the early 70s, and it was like an auto parts store. You'd walk up to the counter, place your order, and the guys would disappear in the back and come out in about 10 minutes with the stuff you just bought. And to me, in modern retailing, that model just wouldn't work. But back in the day, that's how they did it.
Sure.
And so then Kent opened up the front, and now customers were in the back. And then we got more and more into retail. We've, over the years, done everything from paint to Sherwin-Williams or Benjamin Moore house paint. Got out of that business, thankfully. Spray paint. Did mechanics tools for a lot of years, so I still... 20 years ago, a guy came in and bought a wrench, and now he needs a replacement, and he's sorely disappointed we don't sell wrenches anymore. So things have changed, and Kent started taking us more and more into the, I would say, specialized in the contractors. And so as the box stores started coming into being, we had to be where they weren't. And so the plan was we're going to go more and more to the contractors and the pros. And so that's really the perception, I guess, of most people who haven't been in the store. Right. A lot of people have driven by for, 50 years.
Yeah.
And the first time they come in, now with the internet, they find us on the web.
Sure.
And they see us as a woodworking supply house and a specialty store. And it's interesting to me how many people come through the door and say, oh, I've never been in here. I've driven by for 50 years, and it's bigger than I expected, and it's different than what I expected. Because, again, the perception is that this is where the professionals go to shop, and I have no business in there because I'm not a professional.
Yeah.
So, and I think over the last 10 years since I've owned the business, we've worked to get the non-professionals in, the DIYers. So that's why I'm on your show today. Bernita and I, we moved here. We were raised in a small town, rural North Dakota. So we aren't Californians or transplants from there. And we lived in the big city, worked in corporate America, and it was always in the back of our minds, our goal was to get back out to the rural part of the country. And being from North Dakota, and really south central North Dakota in the middle of the frost belt, when the time came, we just didn't want to go back there. We love it there, our family's there, but I don't want to freeze all winter. And so we'd always driven through Missoula and western Montana on our way from Seattle, where our last stop was, to North Dakota. And so when the time came, we thought, well, we'd like to live in the Mountain West. And so we did a bit of a tour and thought about all the places we'd been. And it was always, we've always enjoyed Missoula. We drive through there almost always in June and July during the fire season. And but we've always thought it was just a beautiful place. So when the time came, we decided on Missoula. So that's how we ended up here. And then as far as the business goes, I'd never had a dream or a plan to own a tool store.
Wow.
It's one of those things that I was in Missoula and I was doing what I did forever, and that was high technology, computer science. And I was consulting to some of the local businesses for their point of sale systems and inventory management systems and things like that. And I was an avid hobbyist. I had been a woodworker my whole life. And so I was, as Kent used to say, I was his best customer. And one day I was at the counter and he was thinking about retirement. And half seriously, half jokingly, he said, "Hey, why don't you just buy the whole store?" and I said, I really don't think that's, in line. But the more I thought about it, because I was looking, I was kind of burnt out on the high tech thing. And I was looking for another opportunity or path for something to do. So we just started talking at that point, and about 6 months later, I ended up buying Montana Tool. So it's different on the ownership side of the counter, that's for sure. I had a lot to learn. The good news is Kent was willing to stay on for 2 years. He actually stayed for 3, so I must not have been that difficult to work for or with. And he knew I was going to take it a little bit different direction than what he had done, but he was fine, always supportive, never, raised the eyebrow and said, that's a terrible idea. Right. Though in his mind, he may have been thinking it, but he was always supportive and let me just go with what I felt we needed to do. And so that's kind of how we ended up. We've been there, it's hard to believe when I say it, 10 years already.
Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Our guest, Steve Taft of Montana Tool. And let's talk about some of the lines of tools and accessories you carry. I think it's really, really interesting. And why you choose some of the brands you carry. Well,
again, over time, the mantra, Kent had it, and the original founders of Wilcox Brothers had it too. And that was, in a small market, which western Montana is, if you're selling junk, you're going to get a reputation for selling junk. It's a hard way to stay in business. And so we've always followed that mantra. There are cheaper tools out there than what we sell. There's commodity tools out there, what you'll see in some of the hardware stores and, even Walmart. Then there's the next level of tool. Again, and that's how we developed our reputation as a pro store. And that is a tool that every time you go to use it, it's going to do the job you expect of it. There's no, I hope this works today, or I hope this does what I want, because the pros just don't have the time, especially in western Montana. You can be down in the West Fork, and you've got a tool that doesn't work. That just costs you half a day in time. And time is money in that business. So we sell tools, and our mantra has always been, if we wouldn't buy it, if we can't rely on it, I'm not going to sell it to you and expect you to buy it. So that's just how we've always operated. And so you'll find brands, and I hear this quite often, I've never heard of that before. Well, some of our tool lines are out of Europe. We sell Metabo. And again, now Metabo has just recently bought Hitachi. Hitachis are sold in the box store. So people have heard of Hitachi. That was a Japanese line. Metabo is a German line. So those two have merged. So the other line we sell and that we're kind of, I would say, is our flagship line these days is Festool. Mm-hmm. And Festool has a great reputation. It's out of Germany. It's spendy, but again, for the pros and the do-it-yourselfers that want to buy it once. And I hear that a lot from young guys. They're 30-something, and they'll say, you know, my dad bought a Milwaukee or a Porter cable back in 1965, and he still uses it. Well, the equivalent now, honestly, is the European brand tools such as Festool. You buy it today, and you will have it in 30 years, and it will still be working. They're just, like all things German, they aren't price-driven or cost-driven. They're engineering-driven. And you can tell that just in the quality of the tool, the way it feels in your hand, little things that they do that, unfortunately, a lot of the American manufacturers just don't do anymore, such as gearing. And as a homeowner, you don't think about little things like that. But the gears inside most tools are actually just cast. That means they mold them, and then they throw them together, and you hope that they fit together and everything drives. And a lot of times they do, but they also are subject to wearing out. Where the German tools, the gears are actually still machined. And so they fit together exactly. They run forever. They take oil the way they're supposed to, or the lubricant. So it just works better. It's smoother drive system, and the tool just lasts. So that's kind of how we differentiate ourselves on the larger tools. And again, we're the only place in western Montana that carries large stationary tools. And in woodworking, stationary tools it's kind of obvious, a tool that weighs too much to carry. Okay, you got handheld, portable, and then you got stationary. Yeah. And so in stationary tools, which again, a small stationary tool will weigh 200 pounds. We carry Powermatic, which is the gold standard. That is, again, that's a pro quality machine. We are the Powermatic dealer for western Montana. Then we also carry Laguna, which is a high quality, can be used in the pro, but it's affordable. So I sell that to a lot of the DIYers or home shop guys, what I call hardcore hobbyists that may have had their first machine and they bought something at Sears 20 years ago, and they're ready to move on to the next level machine. And so they come in and they buy the replacement, and that's Laguna. And then I also carry Jet. And then my third line, kind of my entry-level line where beginners start, is a line called Shop Fox. And so the Shop Fox machines, like I say, are entry-level. The way we look at everything is, again, it's serviceable. The quality is there. So we don't sell a machine and then a week later you're back in the store and you're upset with me because this machine doesn't do what you want it to do. So that's kind of our whole philosophy and a few of the lines we carry.
Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Hope you DIYers are enjoying the program with Steve Taft, the owner of Montana Tool here on North Avenue West in Missoula. And I have been running some promotional announcements this week, Steve, that you would be talking about the increase in DIY projects over the past 4 months or so. And as you pointed out earlier in the show, not every customer that comes into Montana Tool has to be an expert craft person. What are you seeing in terms of types of projects? What are customers wanting or asking about when they come in?
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that we are seeing is that, first of all, long feared would be a good word, DIY projects that people, they thought, well, I'd like to do that, but it's just over my pay grade or skill level. And so, but now that they have more time and with the internet, YouTube, primarily, they go out, or Pinterest, they go out and see, hey, I see this gal in Poughkeepsie, New York. She did this exact same project, and it's not as scary or intimidating as I thought it would be. Now, the downside of YouTube is when a lot of these people, they make assumptions. They assume you know what that tool is. They assume you know what router bit they used and so on. So we find ourselves people taking on projects. The big one I've seen a lot of lately is tables. People are building their own tables. Again, you go to the secondhand store, you start looking at tables there. They're all rickety and falling apart. Sure. So people decide to take on their own tables. And so the first thing they perceive that they do is they go out and just get some boards. And now how do I join these boards? How do I get, and by joining, I mean, how do I glue this and make it from a bunch of sticks into a table? Okay. And so they don't understand the process. Okay. Again, the person in the YouTube video shows a glue up and they're just got glue and clamps. Yeah. Well, the DIYer doesn't have the right clamps, and they don't realize different clamps for amount of pressure to glue up a tabletop versus gluing back together an old stool. That's a different clamp for a different purpose. They also don't understand that those boards, really, to glue them up to make a tabletop, they have to have really straight edges. And even the wood you buy at any lumber yard really doesn't have straight edges. It's usually dimensional wood. It's made for building houses, not building furniture. A lot of times, another common mistake is people go out and they buy softwoods, which are pine, larch, building material. The DIYer on the YouTube, though, was using white oak or walnut or whatever. Those are hardwoods. They're a lot more durable, and that's why most furniture you buy is made out of a hardwood. The other thing that's, again, a lot of people don't understand is wood is very susceptible to moisture, meaning as the moisture in the air changes, wood moves. And that's why you've seen lesser quality tables, after 2 or 3 years, they start cracking. They start breaking.
Is that something, not to interrupt you, but is that something you just wouldn't think about? Because if you're talking about a table or stools, you're not talking about outdoor patio.
No, I'm talking about interior furniture.
So it's something you might not necessarily think about because it's going to be in the house the whole time.
Right. And again, out here in western Montana, it's a little bit different because our air is so relatively dry.
Right.
But we still have moisture movement.
Okay.
And so, yeah, people don't think about that. There's also certain construction methods at work and certain construction methods that are bound to fail. And so that's the kind of stuff we see. And again, we know that because we deal with professionals, or I've been building furniture for 35 years. So I know that. So we're happy to share that kind of information with people so we see success in their projects. Because if they have success, they're going to continue to do it. They're going to enjoy doing it. And selfishly, they become a customer and they come back.
Yeah, I want you to expand on that a little bit here. Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate, and our guest, Steve Taft, the owner of Montana Tool. The store has been in Missoula for over 50 years now. You brought up a great example there, Steve. And I know you guys don't preach, but you folks are known for experts and personalized customer service and advice when you are asked about it. What are some of the other common mistakes the less experienced person might make when they take on a project? I know you guys are there to lend a helping hand and reassurance, but folks are going to come in maybe after the fact. They've made a mistake, and now you kind of have to troubleshoot the problem for them.
Well, besides wood, the other thing that we see all the time is the wrong adhesives or glues.
Okay.
There's a lot of glue on the market, and again, to the person who's uneducated about these glues, they think, I'll go out and I'll buy the one that drives us crazy is Gorilla Glue. Gorilla Glue is a great glue, don't get me wrong.
Okay.
But it has a specific purpose, and it's a polyester glue. And so that's why if you've ever used it, they tell you to dampen the surface with water, and then you put it on and you clamp your stuff together, and then it foams. That's the polyester in it expanding to actually make a bond. That foam, you will spend days trying to get it out of wood. Oh. So again, if you're going to use it, you really have to be careful and prep the wood so you can get it back off. And that's kind of the rookie mistake 101. The other thing on adhesives that people do is when they go to the store, they get Elmer's wood glue. Okay, and Elmer's wood glue is a fine product, but it's an interior-only glue. So if they're building a table for the deck, in 2 years, that table will start coming apart. And they'll come in and go, man, I built this table, and look, and they'll have pictures of it, and they'll say it's coming apart everywhere I glued it. And our first question is, well, what glue did you use? Well, I used Elmer's wood glue. Well, Elmer's wood glue is an interior-only glue. We sell glues that are exterior glues. It's the same white glue, or PVA, and that's polyvinyl acetate. That's a type of glue. And that's what Elmer's school glue that we used when we were kids in school. It's also what all wood glues are based off of. And so you can buy it where it has an additive to it so it will not fail if it's outside. Okay, that's another one. The other thing that we see that are rookie mistakes are finishing mistakes. Mm-hmm. So we've spent hours and hours and days and sanded, and we've got it all ready. The first thing that people want to do is they want to put on a stain. The difference between a professional and an amateur is most professionals don't stain. Most professionals use a wood that's the color that they want to start. So if I want a light piece of furniture, I use a light wood. If I want a dark piece of furniture, I use a dark wood. If I want something with a little bit of a reddish hue, I use a reddish-hued wood, such as cherry or redwood, if it's an exterior project. And so if you need to stain, the next thing people do is they tend to go way dark. Or they will go way dark, and then they don't realize that there's several other things that go on top of the stain. It's not your final end-all, be-all. You have to put a top coat on that. That's going to make it even darker. And then they end up 3 shades darker than what they really wanted.
Yeah, right.
So those are some of the beginner mistakes, and we can save you that heartache because, again, if you go to one of the wood stores and buy an expensive hardwood, so you've got $200 or $300 in material, and then another 40 to 60 hours into a piece, and then you get to the stain part, and you're disappointed. That's a tough day.
Yeah, that's a loss of a lot of time commitment there. Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Our guest, Steve Taft, who owns Montana Tool here in Missoula. I also want to thank some of Diane's marketing partners that help bring you Missoula Real Estate Today every weekend on News Talk KGVO. Rob Fleming with Mann Mortgage, Miles Link of Opportunity Bank of Montana, and Carol Blodgett from MakeItMissoula.com. Gosh, this has been great, but we are getting kind of short on time, Steve. One of the things I did want to ask you about as well, that I didn't put down here, but I've always thought it was an interesting product. I guess I've gotten kind of close to what it does and its purpose because I've done a lot of ads for it. Is Saw Stop. Not to throw you a curve here, but I'm not throwing you a curve talking about Saw Stop.
No,
but I think it's really one of the more interesting tools you carry. Got a couple minutes here if you could, maybe go into that a little bit.
Well, yeah, and Saw Stop. For those of you who may have not heard Denny's commercials, and he does a great job with them, it's the only table saw in the world that actually detects human beings and flesh. And it's amazing. It took over 5 years from a guy with multiple degrees from MIT. But the concepts to design, the concepts that he uses are really basic electrical principles. And that's what makes it a fail-safe system. When people are first introduced, they think it's voodoo, magic. But in 2 minutes, the way it works is the human body actually generates a very slight AC or alternating current. There's a theory in electric theory that if you have AC and DC, direct current, on the same circuit at the same time, AC wins. Okay, so what they're doing is they run 3 volts at super low amperage through the saw blade, okay, via the arbor. So they're running this very low DC, and they monitor it. And so then if you touch the blade, all of a sudden there's AC on that circuit. And they make the very safe assumption that has to be you, the human. And so at that point, within 5 milliseconds, which is 10 times faster than an airbag deploys, it goes from detecting that you are touching the blade to releasing a spring in a brake, which is a large aluminum block that jams into the blade and stops it instantly. The whole saw is designed for this. That's always one of the questions people ask is it a one-shot deal? If I touch this one time and am I back in here talking to you again about a new saw? No, the whole system was designed to be rearmed, meaning you put in a new brake, a new saw blade, and it's ready to go again. Literally, and I've done it by accident. It's literally ready to go again in 15 minutes, and you're standing back at the saw knowing that it's not going to amputate. And again, table saw amputations are the number one labor and industries injury in the United States.
Yeah. Steve Taft, the owner of Montana Tool on Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Hey, before we wrap it up, I'd like to ask you about a success story. I always do ask my guests that. Satisfied customers, anything that comes to mind that's been especially rewarding to you as the owner of Montana Tool?
Well, I always feel rewarded, seeing people succeed. That's just a great benefit. But I guess my best story is I had a gentleman come in here, probably a couple years ago. He was in his, I'd say early 80s. Yeah. And his wife came in with him, and he had bought a lathe, a wood-turning lathe to turn bowls. And he had... The grandkids had, been trying to coach him up, but he was really struggling, having a hard time, and he was so disappointed he was about ready to sell it. Well, I sell a line of lathe tools, and that's what you use to actually cut the wood, that gets away from having to learn how to sharpen the tools. And so I sold him one of those tools, he and his wife, and they came back in 2 days later. And she was literally in tears as she came up to me. I'm going to get a little teary thinking about it. She said, I just can't tell you the difference it's made. Now he has a reason to go out to the shop, and he comes in and he's excited to bring in these products, and he's talking about all the stuff he's going to now be able to make for the grandkids and that. And that was rewarding because here's a guy who's worked hard his whole life trying to do something for fun, and just really, it's become a chore. And now it's turned around, and he's having fun with it and enjoying it again. So that's probably the best reward.
That is a great story. Before we wrap it up here, of course, let's talk about location and hours and how we find Steve Taft at Montana Tool.
Okay, well, we're at 1908 North Avenue West, just a block north of the mall. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of our landmark for our out-of-towners. We're open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. And again, I get a couple. I know the DIYers don't like that, but as I tell people, hey, we need shop time too. We're in the shops, a lot of us on the weekends doing our own projects. So 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. You can call us at 406-721-6425. We'd be happy to help you out.
Steve Taft, the owner of Montana Tool on Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Great job. Great seeing you. Hopefully I'll see you on the golf course sometime soon, huh?
Hopefully. And I'll golf better, I promise.
Me too. Thank you for listening to Missoula Real Estate Today. We hope you found this morning's information to be helpful. If you have any suggested topics for any future Missoula Real Estate Today programs or any questions about buying or selling, contact Diane Beck with Windermere Real Estate. Email dianebeck@realtor.com or visit her website, homesinmissoula.com. That's homesinmissoula.com. We'll see you next time on Missoula Real Estate Today.